Well, what story in Scripture do you always think back on?
You know, one of the ones I'm most drawn to is just the story of Joseph.
Yeah.
It's one I am often drawn back to. I think maybe because, having moved around quite a bit, his story was never constant. It was always in flux.
Yeah.
But thankfully, I was not thrown into a pit by my older brother or brothers. I did not suffer in a jail. But I think it's remarkable to see that there is no way at the beginning of it all, Joseph could have been aware of all that God was doing in him and through him.
Right.
And I think I'm so drawn to that story because it is about Joseph, but it goes through and beyond Joseph to bless his family and the nations, because it's a fulfillment of God's promise to Abraham that he's going to bless the nations. But it's not how we would typically think of blessing the nations, because God's going to do it oftentimes through the suffering of Joseph. And we do see God's wisdom in the midst of it all, in the trenches of it all. But something I'm continually reminded of in Genesis 50, verse 20, where it says, he has the scene, his father just passed away, his brothers are terrified because he's the second in command, the second most highest powerful man in all of the world, and now they're trembling at their brother,
right.
And they don't know what he's going to do to them because the father, Jacob's out of the picture, and he says to them not words of condemnation, which he easily could have done, but he speaks words of comfort, and by way of speaking to them, to all of us, it says, what you meant for evil, and he recognizes what they did.
Right.
He says, God meant for good. And you can't, I think I'm struck by the beauty of that, because it comes at the very end of the story in Genesis 50. There's no way you could have understood the sweetness of it in Genesis 37 when the story begins. You've got to go through the pain and the suffering and the trials and the tribulations and the flux and the ups and downs, all of it, to fully appreciate the weight of it. And I think, when you look back on our families' stories, or our church's member stories, or the people that we work with and that suffer through things, there's a sweetness to that comes on the other side of it.
Right.
And that is, our hope, according to Romans 8:28, that God really is working all things for good, but you can see it so tangibly in the life of Joseph. So it's probably my favorite because I'm most often drawn to it, and it's certainly one that I have not come to the end of in my own life, but I kind of almost carry around as an anchor.
Right. Well, just so many things. It was like punch after punch after punch to poor Joseph. I mean, sold as a slave. Oh, now put in the jail, forgotten in the jail. I mean, it wasn't just one or two things.
No.
It was like hard. And I think sometimes we see him, he saved the Israelites because he was second in command. But I mean, that was after a lot of bad, and then we can make it look so sweet. Oh, what God meant. I mean, what man went for harm, God meant for good. But that was, like you said, a bunch of chapters later, and that's a lot of life later.
Yeah.
Chapters, represent years and years in his life that he could say that. And I think sometimes we try to rush through that and try to make it sweet, and it's not always sweet. It's hard sometimes.
And I'm reminded too, when at the end of Joseph's life, that's why we never know someone's story of, I'm reminded constantly when I hear people's testimonies. I was talking to someone recently who I've known for quite a while, and I know them as one version of they're following the Lord. They're so gracious, they're tender, they're patient, they're generous. But to see them transformed of who they were before they met Christ, I almost have a hard time seeing that, because I've seen them on the other side of this story, of the Genesis 50 story, not on the beginning of it all when it first started. And that's hope for all of us, and we'd never know what someone's going through or with the story that God could tell in and through them. So it's deeply, as you said, comforting, encouraging, and challenging.
Yes, it definitely is.